minimalists.
I was wondering what you do as a minimalist in terms of food. I like to cook, and I was wondering if you plan your meals by the week or by the day. What do you do for restaurants? Is it a spontaneous thing?
So if I were to rephrase this question another way, and we can talk about the dining out thing, and because I think that's important. In fact, we'll bring Ben and Bex in to talk about some of that as well. If I were to rephrase the question in a way, I would phrase it like this. What is the most minimalist diet? And I think that's the question that we wrestle with, but also thinking that there's going to be a prescription there with the answer. And I don't have that, but I want to read this excerpt. So this is from Love People Use Things. It's page 121. And this section is from the Relationship with Self chapter. So, of course, for those of you listening to this, you know, the book is 7 different relationships that we want to heal in our lives. The relationship with stuff, it starts with the stuff, as the minimalists, and then it's relationship with the truth, relationship with values, relationship with money, relationship with creativity, eventually a relationship with people. But in between there's the relationship with yourself, which is quite often one of the most difficult relationships to repair because we've been lying to ourselves. We've also gotten caught up in our own patterns that are hard, very difficult to break. And so in there, we talk about sleep, we talk about exercise, we talk about self-care, we talk about being here, being present in the moment. But then there's also the section of diet. It's called A Minimalist Diet. It goes a little something like this. Even now in the 21st century, it's hard for experts to agree on what's healthy. One website might recommend a paleo diet, the next a plant-based diet, and another a low-carb diet. After falling down the rabbit hole of contradictory advice, we slam our laptop shut and return to our deep-fried Oreos, which are totally vegan, by the way. On an episode of the Minimalist Podcast, episode 184, Minimalist Diets, we hosted a discussion, so that's diets plural, right? Because we hosted a discussion between a vegan athlete, Rich Roll, who eats nothing but plants, a carnivore doctor, Paul Saladino, MD, who eats nothing but animals, that's not a typo, and an omnivore doctor, Thomas Wood, MD, who, like 99% of the world, eats both plants and animals. Although all 3 experts were shining examples of health, they held radically different views. Instead of playing host to a debate, I was more interested in what these professionals agreed upon. Despite their different approaches, everyone agreed that processed foods are not ideal for a healthy life, nor is sugar, gluten, chemicals, refined oils, or factory farming. They also agreed that every human being is genetically unique. Therefore, 2 people might experience completely different results on the same diet. No wonder health is so complicated. What works for you might not work for me? That's exhausting. So, instead of prescribing one-size-fits-all lifestyle, it's best to focus on universal principles. This is the framework for a healthy, minimalist diet. Eat real food. Don't over or undereat. Avoid inflammatory foods. Keep away from refined oils such as canola oil, vegetable oil, soybean oil, safflower oil, corn oils, margarine, and the like, because these oils are refined by using chemicals that are harmful to us. Opt instead for healthy organic alternatives like extra virgin olive oil, avocado oil, coconut oil, and grass-fed butter or tallow. Don't eat foods that make you feel bad. Man, that could be like that's the minimalist diet right there.
Right.
Don't eat foods that make you feel bad.
Yeah.
The problem is, what does that even mean? Like, so quite often a piece of cake makes you feel great from the gustatory pleasure during mastication.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make you feel great an hour from now, a day from now, whatever. You never look back, or at least I never look back and say, man, I'm really glad I ate that piece of cake 3 weeks ago. I'm never like really joyous about having eaten that cake 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
It's not to say that I shouldn't eat it. I shouldn't enjoy it in the moment. But there's never going to be a time in the future where I'm like, oh man, I wish I would have eaten more cake 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen. 3 more things here. Focus on the problem, not the symptom. Eat organic plants and grass-fed meats. Buy local whenever possible. Results may vary, but a sturdy framework allows us to build the house that best suits our needs and desires. By my mid-20s, after doing my own research, no longer waiting for someone to show up with a pill to fix my problems, I had changed my diet to remove the causes of my obesity. For me, that meant eliminating sugar, bread, and processed foods. It also meant eating many plants, avoiding snacks, consuming only 2 meals a day, and fasting 16 hours a day. It goes on to talk about the stewardship of the self. And so when we're talking about the minimalist diet, it's what Ryan alluded to earlier. It's what do I cut out? What do I remove? Now, I just gave you a framework there. This isn't my framework, by the way, but I'm interested on what I missed. So let's hear from Ben Greenfield about what I missed and also some different approaches to a minimalist diet. What am I missing here?
Wow. Drop your mic. It's on a boom. What are you missing? Well, related to the concept of minimalism, I could throw a few other tips in there, perhaps, although that's really comprehensive. Like, I think I probably agree with nearly everything in there, aside from the fact I was surprised that everyone who you'd interviewed had thrown in gluten as something that was bad. Just because you'll find a lot of plant-based people are like, well, it's maybe disruptive to your stomach, but it's not like as bad as somebody like, let's say, Paul Saladino would say that it is. And I even think that gluten in trace amounts is kind of like a little bit of a hormetic compound for the body. Not gluten in modern processed, GMO wheat where it's super concentrated, but like I'm not gluten-free. But for me, that might be a slice of lovely fermented sourdough bread where much of the gluten has been, pre-digested, et cetera. But aside from that super nitpicky point, that was really good.
And I think that's why it specifically, I use the word avoid as opposed to eliminate. There are some foods where it makes sense to eliminate, right? Where they're not even foods; they are food products.
The deep fried Twinkies.
Yeah. They were Oreos, but the Twinkies
sorry.
are okay.
That's a Minnesota
Twinkies
thing.
have fiber. See, so yeah. What would I throw in? First of all, from a minimalist standpoint, and related to the question that our dear listener asked, and I've forgotten her name.
Her name's Sarah.
Sarah. First of all, I eat nearly the same thing every day for breakfast, for lunches, and for any beverages or snacks. Down to
McDonald's, right?
No,
Three
it's
meals
not.
a day.
It's not McDonald's, and I'm not saying that everyone's same meals per day need to be the same as everyone else's, but down to almost the near exact time that I eat each day and the meal that I eat each day until about 7 p.m. When we eventually sit down to our wonderful, glorious family dinner where we're experimenting with all sorts of new foods, or we maybe have a giant loin of beef in the freezer and we want to try out some new recipe with it. And so every night is like fun and varied, and it's always some kind of meat, some kind of vegetable, some kind of starch. But every single day, it's typically for me a smoothie for breakfast and some kind of a salad with some healthy fats, almost like a Mediterranean style salad for lunch, and typically, a giant mason glass of water full of wonderful things like vitamin C and baking soda in the morning, and another one kind of in the afternoon. A cup of coffee at some point in there in between waking and breakfast. And so I have very little decision-making fatigue when it comes to my meals, and I'm happy as a clam, just doing that same thing every day. So that'll be the first thing, is just minimalist in terms of the variety of meals that you eat. On a similar vein, I stay relatively minimalist with my preparation techniques of choice, meaning that if you know how to really use a few cool tools in the kitchen, you're kind of set for life. And you don't have to beat yourself up about not having an infrared fryer and a pressure cooker and the slow crock pot and the food dehydrator and the 2 different varieties of food processors. So for me, I generally cook with a sous vide wand, very small sous vide wand. Water bath, meaning you put the water, or you put the food in a bag, you put it in the water, you set it to temperature, you walk away. You come back, and whatever you take a piece of salmon, throw some dill, some salt, some pepper, maybe some thyme or rosemary in there, put it in the bag, walk away, come back, have dinner. Yeah. Right? So I use I use the sous vide.
Yep, sous vide.
I use a grill, right? That's right on my back, and I have one of the electronic grills. This podcast is not sponsored by anyone, so I won't say the name of the grill, but it smokes. It'll tie to my phone to where I can just same thing, adjust the temperature and walk away. So I like these kind of minimalist cooking techniques. And the last one is a pressure cooker. Same thing. put the food in, walk away, fall off the bone ribs that melt in your mouth that would normally take 4 hours on a grill. I can do in a pressure cooker in 30 minutes. And so I'm pretty minimalist with my cooking techniques. It's usually sous vide, pressure cooker, or grill. And then a couple of other tips I would say, because she asked about the restaurants. Before the restaurants, the other thing I would say is, from a minimalist standpoint, if you're trying to minimize calories, which might actually fall into a minimizing point of view for a lot of people, I try to choose a lot of foods that fill me up, but that aren't very calorie dense. So these would be things like there's this type of Japanese noodle called kanten. It's like a gel-like noodle that kind of expands in your stomach. It tastes like you're eating pasta. They make the angel hair variety and the pasta variety. I use this brand called Miracle Noodle. It's 0 calories, 0 carbs, but it's like I can have pasta, or I can serve my lunchtime salad up on top of this stuff, and it fills me up. Another one that I'll give you 3 that I go through quite a bit, like staples for me, because again, I eat the same thing. And you open up my refrigerator, these are always in there. The next one is sea moss gel. Same thing. It's incredibly filling. It's somewhat nutrient dense, very low in calories, and that's something that, rather than, say, putting a bunch of extra coconut milk in a smoothie, right, to thicken it up and give it that creamy texture, which would be 250 extra calories, I'll use a couple scoops of sea moss gel, which gives me the same thickening effect with none of the calories. And then the last one that I like is, I love pumpkin puree. I buy like organic pumpkin puree from Amazon, like the stuff you'd use to make pumpkin pie. But I will just like put a big old spoonful of that on a plate and sprinkle that with a little salt, maybe a small drizzle of honey, a little bit of cinnamon. And it's almost like I have like this edible pumpkin pie, baby food mash that I can eat while I'm having lunch. And so I'm kind of a minimalist when it comes to trying to choose staple ingredients that are actually relatively low in calories but have a satiating effect of a higher calorie compound. Not quite as good as a deep fried Oreo, but the deep fried Oreo went out over the sea moss gel. And then the question regarding restaurants. So yes, we do plan restaurant outings. I actually plan typically 2 months in advance for all restaurant outings and all dinner parties, because I know how quickly evenings fill up and I know how quickly reservations fill up. So typically on the calendar is once each month a date with my wife, once each month a date with each of my boys who are 13 and who are a little bit different when you take them out individually than when they're with mom and the other brother. It's great conversations when you're with a child one-on-one. So I would challenge any parent out there, if you're not yet dating your children one-on-one, do it. And then, in addition to the monthly date with my wife, the monthly dates with each of my boys, we then schedule 2 dinner parties each month in which we have people over to our house, and this would be a wide variety of people from the local community, people I've been wanting to get to know but haven't yet met, people who are old family friends, sometimes family members, sometimes employees, sometimes literally people who the last party, this guy walked off the street, like this homeless kid, into my boy's jiu-jitsu gym and got a job there. He wound up coming up with his jiu-jitsu coach, so we got some Spokane exec on one side and this, homeless kid from the jiu-jitsu gym on the other side. And we just throw these dinner parties where we bring people together. And I provide all the meat, and everyone usually just brings a side. And then ever so occasionally, if I'm feeling really lazy, I will move that dinner party out to a local restaurant. If we just know we don't want to clean up the next morning, but that's kind of how I do the restaurant thing. So I actually plan it in advance, and I know what I'm going to do at restaurants and when and who's going.
Did you enjoy this video? If so, you can listen to full episodes of the Minimalist Private Podcast, available exclusively on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/theminimalists today. Your support keeps our podcast and YouTube channel 100% advertisement free.